Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey, especially if that Grey is some Beasts of Chaos. Today's video, we're going to be talking Beasts of Chaos and their upcoming White Dwarf update, because it has been shown what exactly we're getting. It's around there on the internet, you can go have a look, but we're going to go through it all today, talk about everything that the Beasts of Chaos are going to be getting in their upcoming White Dwarf update coming with the next edition of White Dwarf. And for me, this is fantastic. I think this is one of the best updates we've seen, if not the best. And that's saying something, because I thought the last one was the best. The Ossiarch Bone Reaper one really did help bring the army in line, but I think this Beast of Chaos one, at an overall point, actually raises the army up, which is not something we've seen a lot with these. A lot of these sort of just to sort of path the course. Maybe the Gargants ones took Gargants to that next level, added for a time. But for me, this brings Beasts of Chaos in line, and if not better. I think there is a ton of stuff great about this that just helps so many different Beasts of Chaos models, and if it's a clear indication on how we're going to go for Beasts of Chaos in the future when we do get a full battle tome, this is really exciting stuff. They clearly understand the army and have given it a mechanic and a theme around which it can work in this. It is a really solid update for Beasts of Chaos, and if you're a Beasts of Chaos player, you should be really excited, because I think you're about to get a whole load of help out of this White Dwarf update. With that said, let's get cracking on though, and let's go check out what exactly we've gotten in this amazing White Dwarf update for Beasts of Chaos. And so I guess we should talk about what we got first before we start diving into it. We got three things with this, four technically, but two of them are, sort of the same thing. So we got a nice Herdstone update. We'll get talking about this. This is a fantastic update to the War Scroll. We then got some Monstrous rampages, something I really wanted to see, and I'm so happy that we got so many cool, unique Monstrous rampages and some generic ones as well. We then also got a grand strategy and a good set of 3 battle tactics, which is nice. 3 battle tactics, 1 grand strategy, solid options for the Beasts of Chaos there. With that all said, let's get chatting though about that Herdstone first of all. Alright, so let's start off by talking with the Herdstone. So it's got the normal sort of terrain setup rules and impassable terrain rules. So it's impassable terrain, you can't set it up within 3 into an objective, within another terrain feature, has to be wholly within your territory, normal sort of terrain setup rules there. Now, there are some similarities between this and how it used to work. It still does affect Rend and it still does affect Bravery, but it does so better. So, we first of all got the Entropic Lodestone rule. Now, this is completely separate from the other rule, and this is improve the Rend characteristic of all melee weapons used by friendly Beasts of Chaos units on the battlefield by 1. That's awesome. Everything in the army, Rend 1, melee weapons. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a Chaos Warhound, whether it's a Cycle, you get improved Rend on that model. This is really cool. A lot of the monsters now go to Rend 2, which is really cool. A lot of the base units are now Rend 1. This makes even, going into combat with like some Ungor can do a decent amount of damage, throwing heaps of attacks. This makes a load of different units very viable. Now, however, on top of that, from the start of the 3rd battle round, improved the Rend characteristic of all friendly Beasts of Chaos melee weapons on Beasts of Chaos units on the battlefield by 2 instead of 1. So, all of a sudden, Chaos Warhounds are Rend 2, they're coming in, like every single unit Rend 2. This makes so many units good. Rend 2 on just loads of attacks. I'm thinking, units like fast-moving Centaurs, even your monsters, potentially most of their attacks going to Rend 3 or Rend 4 is just really solid, and there is so much more. This is definitely a very key mechanic that they've honed in on Beast of Chaos, that their whole thing is we have really good Rend, and we can get lots of Rend because there is more Rend rules coming. And let's not forget, we've already got some cool Rend spells. You've got Tentacles of Atrophy, and I forget the name of the one in the Dragon Ogre lore. There's another minus to save spell in the Dragon Ogre lore as well. I forget the name of it, but there is one in each, which is really cool. Now, on top of that, we've got the Locus of Savagery. This is the Battle Shock immunity that we've had previously, but it is slightly changed, and I think for the better of the game as a whole. So first of all, it starts off at 12-inch range. Another thing I really wanted to see. This is really solid. It just means it's way more effective on a larger part of the battlefield, on a larger part of your force, straight from the get-go. And then, obviously, it still increases by 6. I think this was just the change it needed for the range. The rend being a board wide is cool, but the Battle Shock immunity, obviously, you don't want that board wide. And it's not Battle Shock immunity anymore. It is now you halve the amount of models that flee from a failed Battle Shock test. This, I think, is a much better mechanic than straight out ignoring Battle Shock, and I hope this is something that we see across all armies that have ignored Battle Shock, is just halving the number of models that flee. Rounding down, so this does mean, like failing on a 1 or a 2. On a 1, you lose nothing if you're going to lose one model. I like this. I hope this appears to many more armies that have just flat out immune to Battle Shock. Because this makes Battle Shock abilities much more valuable in the game. It's a fun part of the game. It's fun to have those Bravery Bomb armies. I want them to be a part of the game, and I like that Beasts of Chaos aren't ignoring a mechanic straight out. They're just really good at sort of defending against it. In addition, as well, if a friendly Beast of Chaos unit tries to rally within the range of the Herdstone, you do it on a 4+ rather than 6. This is huge. Your large unit of Bestigor got wiped out. Well, you're going to bring back 50% of the stuff that died. With a rally command point. Like, this can be really, really solid. Not only that, but like sacrificing models from your Herdstone could be really cool, because you could wipe them down to like one model out of your 10 Ungor that's sitting near the Herdstone being sacrificed, and all of a sudden you go, cool, now there's 5 or 4 of them back. So now it's 5 or 6 models in the unit, which is pretty solid. I really love the Herdstone update. Alright, and so Monstrous Rampages. Now, this is a battle trait and allegiance ability for the army. It essentially says you get to use all these different Monstrous Rampages. In addition to the regular ones, you can still have to abide by the regular sort of rules for Monstrous Rampages. Each monster can only use 1. You can only use each one once per turn. But with 5 options here, plus the generic ones as well. There's, 4 generic ones? Stomp, Roar, Titanic Jewel, and the Destroy Terrain feature one. I always forget the name of that one because I never ever use it, rarely. But anyway, 9 different Monstrous Rampages. Now, there are 5 generic ones in total. I'm taking into account you got 1 generic one here, and then there are 4 for specific monsters, all of which I think are really interesting. So, the first one and the generic one is Primal Roar. You roll a dice. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 to 5, you get 1 Primordial Core Point, 1 Summoning Point, or on a 6, you receive 3 of those Summoning Points or Primordial Core Points. This is pretty cool because you get to use these at the end of every charge phase, and a monster doesn't have to be in combat. This doesn't say you have a range on it, so if there's just a monster on the table, even if you're not in combat, Primordial Core Point, potentially roll to try and get 1, or potentially try and get 3. Really, really solid, useful Monstrous Rampage there can always be used. Like, maybe if you've got a general that's sort of sitting back, I'm thinking something like a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth could definitely make a lot of use of this. It's like that sort of monster that's going to sit back and sort of more be a support piece. Now, we then got ones specifically for the Gorgon, the Cygor, the Jabberslite, and the Chimera. I'm a little bit disappointed we didn't get one for the Chaos Gargant. That would probably be the only one I think that's missing from this, but, 4 of these is pretty cool. And the Chaos Gargant can just use one of the regular ones anyway, or uses Primal Roar for us. So we've got Feast on Flesh. This is for the Gorgon. However, Gorgons can only ever use this once per game per model. So you get to improve the rend characteristic of this model's melee weapons by 1 until the end of the following combat phase. Remembering with that Herdstone on, this would make a Gorgon rend 3 base. I think I tallied it all up. There's potential ways to get a Gorgon like to rend 8. It would require a lot of shenanigans and a lot of things coming together, but, that's cool. So being able to get your Gorgon to rend 3 pretty simply, or potentially even if you're on turn 3 onwards and you use this, your Gorgon's going to be rend 4. Now, in addition to that rend, until the end of the following combat phase, each time an enemy model is slain by an attack made by this model heals a number of wounds equal to the wounds characteristic of the slain model. It's pretty solid, you go into a unit of Stormcast and you kill enough Stormcast and you're healing 2 wounds a pop per Liberator, or Paladins 3. You go into something like Dracothian Guard and you kill 1, you heal half your wounds up. It's pretty cool, and like the amount of rend that Beasts of Chaos can now get, and the amount of access to all these debuff spells of negating armor and stuff like that, it's not unlikely that you're going to go into Dracothian Guard with a Cygor and with a Gorgon, and actually kill one. Now, we've then got Devour Spell, which is for the Cygor only. Now, this one maybe doesn't have as much use at current, but maybe if we start to see Endless Spells coming back in the meta, this is a really useful tool for the Cygor. So you get to pick one Endless Spell within 6 inches of the model and roll 2d6. If that roll exceeds the casting value of the spell that summoned this Endless Spell, you remove the Endless Spell and you heal an amount of wounds equal to the 2d6 roll you used to try and get rid of the Endless Spell. Pretty cool, like, in all honesty. Like, this is going to be really useful in that time where your opponent's got like a debuff Endless Spell near you that they're using to debuff you, or it's putting out an aura, maybe something like a Battle Shock immunity. You know, even something that's like trapping you. Send your Cygor into that Warp Lightning Vortex and just go, cool, I'm going to eat it. It's not always going to work, but it definitely has some uses. I think this is a solid thing. This is making the Cygor do what it's supposed to do, but better. I like this. It's probably the least useful out of all the three, out of all these new ones, but it does have a purpose and it is somewhat useful, so I do like it. We then got Entropic Miasma. The Jabber Slayer is the only one able to use this. You pick an enemy hero within 3 inches of the model and roll a dice. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 to 5, you worsen their save by 1 to a minimum of 6+. You can never negate a save entirely. And until the end of that combat phase, this is when it lasts. On the roll of a 6, however, you worsen it by 2. Once again, to a minimum of 6. This comes into play with that Gorgon one. You can sort of pair these together and really go after one of your opponent's heavy hitting characters. If you can get that Gorgon to be hitting, you know, there's a way to make that Gorgon an absolute killing machine. I'm thinking like Titanic Fury on it. You could potentially have Tendrils of Atrophy, the spell from the Dragon Ogre lore, your turn 3, so your Herdstone's working as good as it can. Plus these two working together, it could be really cool. Like, it can get up to Rend 8. That is the maximum you can get, which is just silly, silly Rend. Screw you and your save stacking meta. But so I think that's really useful. Like, this is going to be really useful for getting something into your enemy. Now, what's cool about this is it's a great potential thing to maybe get some extra rend on one of your other units. I'd use this if you're trying to fight someone and you've got, you know, the advantage in the fight. You probably don't attack first with the Jabber Slayer, in all honesty. You probably send in something like Bestigor or something with some really high damage weapons, maybe like Dragon Ogres or something like that, and you send this in, getting that extra point of rend. Remembering this here technically puts a point of rend on, so this would be rend 2 on your Dragon Ogres or your Bulgors or something like that, and get them to try and do the damage, not the Jabber Slayer. It's probably not going to do an awful lot itself. It's going to be the support piece going into a sort of Stonewall character, negating a bunch of its armor benefits, and then have your other unit in. That could be like Bestigor, Gore, something. Like, so many BC Chaos units make for good units now with just the fact they all have rend. Now, the last one we've got is Thricefold Savagery, which is the Chimera only. Until the end of the combat phase, you add one to the attacks characteristic of all this model's melee weapons, but you have to target the same unit. I mean, if you've read the Chimera profile, it's got like 5 different attack profiles. 4, 5, something like that. But I think it's actually 4. But anyway, you know, an extra attack, there's a bunch of extra attacks. It always is a little bit swingy. This is solid on the Chimera. It's going to make your Chimera that little bit more fighty. Really good. Like, Chimeras are a great summoning option for Beast of Chaos with their mortal wound damage, and then being able to come in and do Thricefold Savagery now. I really, really like it. And lastly, we look at the grand strategy and the battle tactics. For starters, the grand strategy, protect your Herdstone. I think this is a really good grand strategy for the beast, because your Herdstone's so good, you don't want it to fall. So you complete this grand strategy if there are no enemy models within 9 inches of your Herdstone at the end of the game and has not been picked for a successful Smash to Rubble Monstrous Rampage. This is pretty cool. For me, this is a really good... It just relies on you protecting your Herdstone, which is something you're going to want to do in your general play. In general, you know, it's definitely a good option. And then, for me, I look at this in the Shadow of the Herdstone with the ability to get a battle tactic for your opponent trying to be sneaky and get in range of your Herdstone. To deny this, you've actually got a battle tactic you can use late game to try and get them out of your Herdstone area, to not only pick a battle tactic up, but to get your grand strategy as well. I think these two, you know, they've thought about these two and actually have them work in tandem. It's cool. Now, we've then got Fury of the Wild. This one, for me, I think is probably the worst out of the ones that we have access to for our battle tactics, where you can only pick it in the first round. You complete it if your general and at least one other Beast of Chaos unit are within 3 inches of the enemy unit. A lot of Beast of Chaos heroes don't want to be in combat, bar maybe like the Dragon or your Shaggoth or the Beast Lord, you know, and you've got to be really careful where you put those characters. It's useful, and it definitely has some use for another early game one. The fact it's only in the first battle round, for me, is the downside of this. I think this is the worst thing we've got in the whole update, but it certainly has use. You know, maybe your opponent sends something early or redeploys something or teleports something in your face, and this could be like easily achieved without actually having to do anything if you're on the counterplay. So I think that's where it maybe has a little bit of use on the sort of, if you're the person going second, your opponent's pushed into your lines, you protected your hero, but he's already within 3, you know, sort of sitting behind your lines. It definitely is a useful battle tactic to have. You know, you can easily do it in case your opponent locks you up early game and stops you getting, you know, the, ferocious advance, where you run through units that a lot of people do first turn. We then got Wrath of the Warped Wilds, which is our third of our battle tactics. You pick one objective your opponent controls, you can complete the tactic if you control it, and you have at least some summoned models on it from the Primordial Call battle trait. Pretty solid and pretty easy to do. I mean, you're going to be summoning stuff all game. I think this is a really useful battle trait. These are 2 definitely good ones, and one that is situationally good and useful, though maybe not always, but 2 out of 3, and considering the rest of the stuff we got in this update, I'm really happy with this. Grand strategy is also very, very solid. But that is everything the Beast of Chaos got in this White Dwarf update. What are your thoughts? Let us know down in the comments below. Well, that's it for the video. We hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our little fine community here at Cinderful Gaming, you can do so by following the link in the video's description to our Discord server. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel more, you can do so by following the links to either our Patreon or YouTube members down in the description of the video. It goes a massive way to helping the channel continue to produce the content that it does. We'd like to give a special shout out to all our patrons and YouTube members, so a special thank you to our Patreons: Christian Weir, James Soren, Greenskins Gaming, AJC, Kenny Lowell, Outer and Shot First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, Anton Nilsson, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, and Samuel. And a shout out to our YouTube members: Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Chris Wallace, Ronya, Vinny, Lochloric, The Johnny84, David Ellsworth, Revenar, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, Sean Scott, and Ariana Edwards. Finally, a last special shout out to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel that you see pictured here, and to Xmorphic, who does all the amazing and background work on our Discord server for us. Thank you both, you do amazing work. That's it though. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Once again, stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.